Hi, everyone. Today we're going to talk with Sherri Rabinowitz, host of Blog Talk Radio's Chatting with Sherri. Sherri is also an author who's written mysteries, memoirs, and children's books, and a playwright who produces plays at Sherri's Playhouse. And today we're simply going to be talking about the fun of being creative on the Dreamforge channel.
Take your seat. The human adventure is just beginning.
Talking with Sherri Rabinowitz. So, Def, why don't you introduce our guest?
Sherri's first book, Murder Inc., was a fan favorite, then came Fantasy Time Inc., which was nominated for a Global eBook Award. Her children's book, Different is Beautiful, is already a bestseller. It has been number 2 in hot releases, number 2 in early childhood education, and number 3 in preschool and kindergarten on Amazon. And it won the gold, first place, for Global eBook Awards for Children Picture Books Fiction category. Her memoir Entering My Second Half has been nominated for Global eBook Award. Sherri's second children's book is A Kitty's View, which was number 1 in hot new releases in children's activity books. Ranked number 1 on Author Page, A Kitty's View, an interactive children's book. On its way is a second edition of Murder Inc. with Orsic Publishing. Sherri is the host of Blog Talk Radio's Chatting with Sherri, and her show was nominated for the Shorty Award. The show Chatting with Sherri is entering its 7th season, and it's the home of the Chatty Awards. Sherri is also the producer of Sherri's Playhouse, which is entering its 4th season. Welcome, Sherri. It's good to have you on the Dreamforge channel.
Hi, Sherri. I'm glad you could make it. It's really great to have you on.
Hi, Scott. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you're most welcome. For those of you who have been watching the Dreamforge channel but not familiar, Sherri has a podcast called Chatting with Sherri, and she's invited us on several times now, and she's always been a very gracious host, and we've always had a lot of fun talking. So I wanted to have Sherri on as one of our first guests, and I'm really happy that she was able to come on. And really what I want to talk about today is kind of creativity, because one of the things that I've learned, and you probably heard from the introduction and bio, that Sherri's a very creative person, and she does a number of things. She has her Chatting with Sherri podcast. She does Sherri's Playhouse and produces plays. She's written children's books. She's been an actress. She's just a very creative person. She really engages with the world, and I would suspect that's one of the things that makes her as happy and outgoing as she is. So I wanted to talk about a little bit of those things and see how they came about, because I've been mainly on the receiving end of the interview and talking about Dreamforge, and today I want to learn more about Sherri. So let's start just with, because I've been on your show Chatting with Sherri so many times, let's start with just learning a little bit more about that. When did you start Chatting with Sherri, and what kind of guests do you interview, and how do you have fun with that?
Well, it started out of desperation. My second book, Fantasy Time Inc., had come out, and I was trying to get on a podcast or a radio show, and I was having a really difficult time. At that time, the hosts would have you fill out forms, and they would reject you for the stupidest reasons, and they were kind of snotty about it, and I was just really having a very difficult time. And the 2 shows I had been on, they didn't ask follow-up questions, and it was very tight, and I was very uncomfortable. And so I was talking to my mom, and my mom comes up with great ideas. My mom was very creative. She said, "You were an actress, you're a writer, you're very creative. Why don't you do a show?" And I go, "Well, I've never done that." And she goes, "Well, what's stopping you?" And I go, "Okay, well, I could test it and see if it goes." And that's how it started. I also asked Stephen L. Sears, who I'm very friendly with, that I met through Xena conventions. He's a producer of Xena and other shows. He's a very creative guy himself. And I said, "What do you think of this idea?" And he says, I think it's great. Go for it. I was like, okay, that's two people I really respect who think I can do this. So that's how it came about.
That's wonderful. Well, you really have a natural talent. Anybody who's been on Sherri's show knows that one of the really cool things she does that you don't often get with podcasters, because they are oftentimes, on that time schedule running a show. It's like, okay, well, we're doing a sound check, you're on, kind of thing. Sherri is very good about talking with you for a while before your recording actually starts, and that basically just gets you very comfortable, and you're now in a mode where you're just having a conversation with somebody, and you become very fluid, and Sherri just sneaks it in there, and it's like, okay, I'm going to turn the recording button on now, and we're just going to keep talking. So I think that's a really cool feature of what you do as well, and I think that was very smart. Did you make that up yourself? Did somebody advise you on that?
Nope, I made it. That's just my personality.
Oh, okay.
I'd like to get to know people before I start interviewing them, because if you do that, like you said, you get the person comfortable, and they find out I'm not Mike Wallace. I'm not trying to find out what your innermost thoughts are. I'm not trying to find a scandal. I'm trying to know who you are and having a conversation with you. So if you have a little chat beforehand and they get to see what you're like, which is really what the chat's about, to see what I'm like, so they'll know that I'm a nice person. They get comfortable, and like I said, that's really part of my own personality. My father called me his little chatty Cathy because I used to talk all the time. I used to get that was my biggest problem in school. Sherri talks too much during class. It's just me.
Well, now in working on a podcast, it basically is your strength. That's your core strength there. So who do you like, not necessarily even naming a person, but just what are some of your favorite kinds of interviews? Just things that you've really enjoyed as far as interviews and that sort of thing.
Well, my show's about interviewing creative people. It's not any specific aspect of it. It's anybody who's creative. So I've had directors, actors, writers, costume designers, poets, all kinds of different people. And I really enjoy finding out about why they do what they do. And I like to find out where their inspiration comes from. And it's fun to talk to different types of creative people. Oh, and fine artists. I forgot fine artists. How can I forget fine artists? Painters and sculptors, and I've had a lot of different types of creative people, and I think it's really important that the public hears what creative people are like, why they do it, where it comes from, what inspires them, so they can see that anybody can be creative, and anything that makes you happy, that is a creative process, is something that's good. Knitting, needlepoint, cooking. There's so many different aspects of life that's creative. I may not interview you because of that, but that might inspire you. Hey, I really like to cook, so it's very creative to me. So I'm going to try it, because I might mention it during the show or something. You know what I'm saying? Creativity is anything that makes you happy.
And I think that's important. And just to key off your thing there with cooking, it's like, and this, maybe we can morph this into a discussion on different types of creativity, but I love to cook. And one of the things that is very differential from like me and my wife, for instance, is I love to cook by making stuff up. Like I love to basically go in with no plan. It's like, well, what have we got? Well, there's some chicken, there's some hamburger, or there's some steaks, in the freezer or whatever. And it's like, well, what else do I have? Do I have mushrooms? Do I have the spice? Do I have, red wine? And I will just literally make up dinner as I go. And everything is always different. So if I make something and someone says that is absolutely fantastic, that's really delicious, can we have that again? It's like, I have no idea. I just, you got the one. It's like I could make something similar to that, but I wasn't taking notes. And I know other people might be very into what has to be very precise. And this is why I don't bake, because baking is actually very precise. But lots of people are into that very precision, and you know, they want to accomplish something and they want to be able to duplicate the thing. And I think on the creative side, oftentimes you have sort of those different personalities. You've got some people who are really, they want the career, you know, they're really driven to, well, I need to get to this point in the career by a certain time, or I need to accomplish this, or here's my goal and I'm really driven to get to it. And you have other people who are just, being creative makes them very happy. It allows them to engage with their own inner creativity, and it allows them to engage with other people who have similar passions. And it's a way to basically make life pleasant and be involved in community. And me personally, that's just the aspect of things that I like. So here at Dreamforge, you know, we're not driven to, oh, well, we need to win the awards, or we need to build our magazine audience up to such and such a level, or, you know, whatever. It's like, we're really here for the community that forms around us. And it's like, well, how do we engage with our writers? How do we talk to them? My wife, even some of our people who are writers and some of our Dreamcaster group, she'll arrange on a Saturday night to have a game night with them, and they play games on the computer. And it's like, that's the kind of thing that just makes life enjoyable.
Yeah, that's what the point is. Yeah, when you're doing something creative, it makes you happy, no matter what it is. I think it's really cute about you not. I've seen that with some. My ex-boyfriend was like that. He used to like get a big crock pot and throw everything in it and do all these things, and it was really delicious. And I say, oh, can we have what we had last week? It was really, and he goes, I don't know, I can try. I don't remember a damn thing I put in it. So yeah, I understand that. It's really interesting. I'm not a cook. I love eating, but I'm not a cook. And I actually was watching the show Julia. It was this, it's well, I don't know what to call. I guess it's a drama. It's a comedy drama. I don't know. But it's a very interesting show. And I've always found people that cook interesting. When I was a little girl, I actually watched Julia Childs. My mom watched her, so I would sit down and watch her. And I also watched somebody called the Galloping Gourmet.
I remember the Galloping Gourmet. I've watched the Galloping Gourmet.
He was so funny, and you didn't have to cook to enjoy him because he was just so adorable. He just, and it's that. It's the engagement, the joy he had as he cooked, the engagement with the audience. That's what's interesting. It's not necessarily throwing things in the pot, you know. I mean, that's just, it's part of it, but that's not why creativity is fun. For myself, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, for myself, I'm more, I write poetry. I write, you know, stories and stuff. I've done that since I was a little girl. And I act, and I've done that. I used to act with my dolls. I used to put on musicals. I put my Carpenter's records on, and I would sing to my dolls. And then I took dancing classes, and I would dance for my doll. I'd have a whole performance, and all my dolls were sitting on my bed, and in my head they were all applauding me. I just had this weird imagination. It was like, the other thing I used to do was when I walked home from school, if I was walking by myself, I'd have this. I love the show Bewitched, and I had this entire thing in my head how I'm related to Stevens, and that they're my cousins, and that I was a witch, and that this is just walking from school home. It was like 2.5 blocks. Um, I had come up with this whole storyline about how our Auntie Serena came and she caused trouble, but I love her because she's so much fun. I mean, that kind of thing. I just
Mhm.
had stuff pop in my head, and I
I
thought I was
understand. I understand
weird.
this very much. I was very similar. I remember as a very young child, at the point where your parents put you in the sandbox to play in the sandbox. So I had sand and I had clothespins because this was in the age when your mom put clothes out to dry on the line. And the clothespins became like little space guys in space gear. And out of the sand, I made the little habitats kind of thing. It's like, and I was basically telling stories about an exploration of an alien planet, and that's how I kind of spent my childhood. Uh, because from the very first time that I saw anything on TV that looked like a spaceship or anything, I was absolutely enthralled, by that. And I was always telling stories. In the winter, I would go out and other people would, they would build snowmen. I would build sort of snow space habitats, and I would have my little guys in the snow space habitat. So I didn't start out saying, oh, I want to be a writer, so much as in high school when they said, oh, well, here's typing class. It's like, oh, wow, I get to use a machine where I can actually like put some of these stories, like I can type things, that was really cool.
I kind of relate to that because remember those little doughboy pools?
Mm-hmm.
It's like a big plastic pool that you can deflate and put in your garage when it's
Uh-huh.
not summer. Well, I used to swim in that, and I used to pretend I was a mermaid. I was only 5 or something. But I mean, it was like that was I would keep my legs together and kick my legs together. I was a very good kicker, so that was no problem. Um, and I would like swim around the pool, and I would like have this whole storyline in my head, looking for my sister mermaids, and they were all missing, and I gotta find them. I mean, it's part of how you become creative. Is how you let your imagination go cuckoo.
Well,
It's fun.
I think there's also an element of empathy maybe that's connected to creativity, because I was constantly able to put my head or my thoughts into other things or other people. And the incident that comes to mind is, again, very, very young, outside, sit on a bee, which stings me, right?
Wow.
So I'm very concerned. The thing that I remember most is, one, because it was very young and painful, so that usually sticks it in your memory. But I
Yeah.
was very, very concerned about the bee. This was the first time where it was explained to me that if a bee stings you and it leaves your stinger in you, the bee's gonna go away and die. And I was absolutely distraught. So I think part of it is also just that ability, that part of creativity is also thinking, well, what is it like to be a bee when a giant, human child sits on you? And, that actually gives us a little bit of a segue into things, because you also write children's books. And one of your books was actually called A Kitty's View. And you were actually trying to take that viewpoint from the viewpoint of the kitty. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I love that book. That was based on my cat Xena. She passed away, but I love that cat. She was always getting into little adventures. But I wanted it to be a way for kids to be creative. And I wanted it to be sort of a fun, non torturous, because sometimes you get these things and they're kind of torturous. Just a fun learning experience. So I had one where at first she was scared of the heater, and it was a big monster, and then slowly she just saw that, oh, he came from it, and she started to like the heater, and she used to come by. So it changed from a monster to a good thing. And after I wrote this little thing about Xena, I would put a section for the kids to say, well, what happened to you that you saw like a pet or something that is at first they're scared, and then they realize it's good, and what happened to the pet when they realized that it was a good thing, and did their whole attitude change. And then that's all you put in, and you let them answer. And it was just little things like that, little tiny stories of Adventures of Xena.
That's really cool. And yeah, because you're basically creating situations or showing things from the kiddie's point of view, where the kids reading the book can understand, when I see things that are different, or when I experience things that are scary, it simply may be how I'm seeing it at the moment. It's not necessarily that everything is a danger or a big challenge. It's just a matter of perspective.
Right, because you don't understand what the situation is you're actually in yet. And then when you do, it can turn the whole thing around. You're no longer going to run away from it. You're going to run to it.
That's really cool. Yes, it is. Now, have you done some other children's books, or?
Yeah, I did a book called Different is Beautiful. And it was sort of a strange way of getting to it. It's actually a storybook for little kids, picture book. And basically, it's an anti-bullying book for children, and a book about acceptance, and that it doesn't matter what you look like, you're beautiful. And everybody has a reason for being here, and everybody has a reason for looking the way they do. And that is a good thing, and it's a positive thing in the world. And that's basically what it is. It was just a little short, and I actually won an award for it, a book award, which kind of surprised me. It's my only book award. That's for my little children's book.
Well, that's great. And these books are still available on Amazon?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to put some links. We'll put some links in the video description, so people who are interested can go take a look at those. So that's great. But you're the things that you do range over such an interesting range, because we've talked about your podcast and your interviews about creative people, and you're doing children's books, and one of the things last year that I was really excited about and had fun listening to was you produce your own radio shows on Sherri's Playhouse, and you had one that was just so fascinating, was Am's Lieb, I believe, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and that was essentially like a family history, going from diaries and records and that sort of thing, and kind of putting together a drama about your family as they come to America and stuff. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, this was after my mom passed away, and I had a lot of her stuff. And so I had a lot of the history that she wrote. Well, I'll go back further than that.
Sure.
When I was the kind of kid that would listen to the stories my grandparents told me. I actually like to hear the stories. A lot of my cousins never listened to any of the stories. They would just pretend to, or they would run away before they heard the whole story. But I love to hear the stories. My mother loved to tell stories about herself, my father. So I like to listen to family history. So after my mom passed, I looked at some of her version of the stories, and I thought that the story of my grandmother in some ways was very progressive. At the same time, she was old-fashioned. It's just very interesting dichotomy. So I thought she was an interesting person to write about. And on top of that, the store that my great-grandfather and my grandma and my Aunt Teresa created in New York was a material store for like people to make clothes and things like that. And they got like people from both Broadway and the Yiddish theater that came in. So they saw these amazing actors that came. Mary Pickford came, and forgot her name. She was in Cannonball Run 1 and 2, if you ever saw
Sally
those.
Field?
No. It's an old lady.
Okay. I'm trying to think of who was in those movies.
It's the old lady, because it was Yiddish theater back when my grandmother was a kid.
Yeah, yeah. No.
She played the old lady with Roger Moore, and Roger Moore was her son Seymour.
Sorry.
Anyway, she was a great Yiddish actress, and then later on, as an old lady, obviously, she became a character actress on regular movies and TV shows. And so I thought she was fascinating, and there were stories about them, and there were stories about my grandparents, how they met, and there was all kinds of different things. So I actually broke it into 3 parts. The first part was my grandfather having my mother and my Aunt Teresa come to the United States because they were really great sewers. I mean, and my grandma was a great sewer until she got to be pretty old. Like, I think she was in her 80s before she started getting arthritis. So she would, if you looked at an outfit, she would make it for you. If you asked her to make a choir outfit for you, she would make 6 of them. But like, instead of a long skirt, a short skirt, and a vest, and with different tops. I mean, she was very creative. And my Aunt Teresa was just as creative. So that's why Grandpa sent them to family in New York to work in the garment area, raising money. And he was raising money in the old country, so he could bring the rest of the family over to the new world. So that was the first part, is them helping to start the business. Which I don't think most of my family even know that, but that's because they didn't listen to Grandma tell their stories. Anyway, so that was the first part. The second part was once they were in New York, my grandma started working as a costumer as well as selling the material to people like Mary Pickford and the other lady that I can't think of her name. So that's the second part. And the third part was the romance. It's via letter between my grandfather and my grandmother before they got married. And so that's what it is.
And well, it was very well done. And like, I can't imagine how you organize, like where do you find your actors, and how do you get a production like that going, especially like in a COVID year?
Well, first of all, they were already working on Sherry's Playhouse, so
Okay.
It's not like they didn't know me. But then it's something that they said, and I related really deeply when I said, okay, I have some stuff to do, but I don't know how you feel about it because it's COVID and I don't know what you're doing, and da 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 da. And they all wanted to do it because it gave them, not only did they want to do it because they felt they were good plays, but they gave them a sense of community, because they were talking to, I have actors from here in San Diego. I have actors in LA. I have actors in New York. I have actors in Kansas, Arizona, Texas. They're all over. So they're spread out. So we're all together on Skype. So they felt a sense of community coming together, just, talking to each other, finding out what's going on in their area and stuff. We always chatted before and after we worked on the play. We always rehearse plays. And so that's one of the things during the COVID period. I did a few plays. Another one was about a harlequin and a Spanish doll and a soldier, and they're in, they don't know it, but they're in a toy store. But all they know is that they're separate. They can hear each other, but they're separated by boxes, and they're trying to find out who they are, because even though they're dressed like this, they don't know if they're that, and who they are and what they are and how they're there and how alone they felt because they were so separated. It was my that was my COVID thing. That was my way of dealing with COVID. The first part was the family stories was my way of dealing of the grief of losing my mom, and the part it was called Dimness. It was about how alone we all are when we can't like go and meet somebody for coffee or something like that. Again, it's the sense of community, and so that's why I wrote it.
Oh, and also what you see there, even in what you're saying, is your creativity helps you deal with the world. So it's not like oh well, here's the here's the play that I'm going to get on Broadway or whatever. It's like, here's the emotional thing that I'm dealing with, here's the situation in my life, and I'm going to find a way to express that and deal with it creatively. And I think people, we live in such a world of, well, I'm just going to go play computer games, or I'm just going to watch television or whatever. It's like, I think people really miss the idea that you can be creative in dealing with just all sorts of the issues that you may have, or the stresses that you're going through. And if you put it down on paper, or you create your own little podcast and talk about it with people, or you engage in that idea of community, that a lot of that relieves those stresses and just makes you feel better about life, because you're dealing with it rather than just fuming about it. And I think that's so important.
Yeah. Well, I've always done that. I mean, first I want to let you know, Sherri's Playhouse isn't just my plays, but during this COVID time, it was my plays because everybody was so busy with life and they didn't really write plays. But most of the time it's like one of my plays and three other people's plays. Just want to make sure it's not, oh, this is Sherri's Playhouse and Sherri writes all the plays.
Well, I was one of my next things was I was gonna get into was, I did see, I think on your Facebook for Sherri's Playhouse, that are you working on a new one, Fallen Angel by Ariel Strauss Bruland? Is that the thing that's coming up?
No, that was from last season. That was actually the closer for last season. It's like,
okay.
That was a updated version of Romeo and Juliet. What if Romeo and Juliet got reincarnated? How would they avoid the tragedy? That's what that play. And it was actually, that was by Ariel. Yeah. And she did a really good job. And that was her, actually, she learned how to direct during that too. She shadowed me as I was directing her play. And that's another thing. There's a lot of stretching going on when we're doing these plays. First, the good thing about a radio playhouse is you can play anything. You could play old, young, you could play any culture, you could play you could be a harlequin, you could be doll. I had these people being dolls. But also I invite all the actors to write, and she's actually one of the actors. And I also invite the people who do write to direct. They don't always take me up on it. I end up directing plays because they don't want to do it. But it's a way to expand. And also with radio theater, it's an energy that most people don't get to play with, the voice. I mean, the voice acting community is very small. It's not something that everybody can do. And a lot of the voice acting goes to movie stars and big stars. So you can't really get a movie gig, and you can't really get a commercial because that's the next level of actors who get that, TV stars and people that are, so this was a way for people to do that, not have to pay for it, to expand themselves and to do something different. And like I said, and it gave them a sense of community.
Mm-hmm. There's always that idea of stretching the envelope a little bit and just learning what you can do and learning where your weaknesses are and that sort of thing. And And one of the things I think sometimes, because we all on social media, we tend to live in these echo chambers where we just interact with people who agree with us. And if they don't agree with us, we just troll on them and act as though just being mean to someone is going to change something. But I think what's really fascinating is if you do get out into community, or you do podcasting, or you become creative and put yourself out there, it's not a bad thing to run into someone who disagrees with you or does something differently or sees things from a different way, because that's part of your learning process. It's like, I think it's very healthy for all of us to learn. It's like, oh, well, I really had this really strong opinion that the world should be like this. And here's somebody who's not just, coming at me being mean to me because they disagree with me, but they just made a really good point. And I didn't see the world from their perspective, or I didn't understand that, I should be thinking about it in this way. And it helps you, grow and basically, expand your perspectives. You're not always going to, agree with everyone or the way they do something, but you can start to see validity in how they got there. So again, that idea of just being creative and engaged with things is a way to grow and interact with the world.
Yeah, it's a very important way. And that's also something that a lot of people that are part of Sherri's Playhouse are, when they do write a play, they get to express themselves about things that are bothering them or it's not working well, but they do it in a creative, non-aggressive way. So they're doing it in a way that they're showing their heart, but they're not hurting anybody and they're not hurting themselves. It's a positive thing all around. And of course, they're helping the audience, even if the audience doesn't want to be helped.
Well, what things are you working on these days? Like what do you see as a cool thing you're going to be working on this year? The next play, the next book, the next interview you have coming up? What kind of things are you looking forward to?
Well, the play that we're rehearsing right now is by Mary D. Brooks, and it's called The Light. Oh dear, hold on. I have to look up the name of it. I never remember names of things. I'm terrible. The Light That Shines Beyond the Gates. And basically it is a sequel to a play she did last year called Beyond the Gates. And it's a drama. It's going to tear your heart out. This is I actually do recommend that you listen to Beyond the Gates, so you kind of understand who the characters are. But it's a standalone. It's just probably be better, and you can have more empathy for what's going on in this, because it is a searing drama, this one. And it's I don't want to give anything away, but it's really good, and our cast is great, and Mary's a very good writer. She's an award-winning novelist that I talked into writing a play. She got hooked, and now she writes plays for me once a season. So I've done that a few times.
Well, I think one of the things I see this, we're speaking about being creative and it all sounds fun and everything, but one of the things I see in the beginning writers that try to write for our magazine, that write for Dreamforge, and a lot of times you get this sense where people take things very, very personally. It's like they're writing their short story, and if we send it back, and we tend to not call things rejections, we're returning your story, we're not going to be buying it right now, but people seem to think that we're making a judgment on their creativity, that we're basically saying, you can't be creative, I didn't buy this, therefore you're no good at doing it. And one of the things I really want to always stress to the writers that I work with and to people who are just creative in general is that's not true at all. It's like it's just numbers. Like when you're publishing a magazine, you may have an open reading period where you're going to be able to buy like 20 stories, and you got 1,000 submitted. Well, obviously the numbers just don't work, and the judgment isn't being made that I've returned. Your story might not make it into the magazine simply because it's written, on the wrong theme, or we already bought one of those stories, and we already did 2 Mars and a time travel story, and we don't want another one, or, and then it may simply be that you're not yet at the level of skill where, you're going to, be in the mix with what we have. It doesn't mean you're untalented. It doesn't mean we didn't enjoy reading it, but you may have just some structural problems with the story, or your structure might have been good, but you have, you need to concentrate a little bit more on the language and the sentence structure. But you're in a process. You're not being judged as a person as to whether you're worthwhile or not, or you're, oftentimes, we see improvements over things, and we're rooting for, that person. It's like, I really want to buy one of their stories, and they haven't got to exactly what I can pay for yet, but hopefully they will one day. And I just I don't know how that reflects on your experience with creative people, but sometimes they can take things too personally. It's like, we're not making, the people who are buying things or paying for things, or sometimes we're not making personal judgment necessarily on you. It's like, still keep being creative. It's a good thing.
Oh yeah, and I never actually reject. I just say, okay, this is what I think needs to be done. Sometimes they'll do it, sometimes they won't. That's up to them. But I never actually say this is a bad story or this is a bad play or anything like that. I don't have that right to say that. I just say, well, this isn't working for me. If you could work on this part, maybe have better dialogue, or, work on the characterization for that so the dialogue comes in smoother, something like that. But I never reject it, because if it comes back, great. If it doesn't, well, that's their choice. That's just the way it is. But I rarely actually have turned away, as I pretty much have taken most of the plays that's come through from other people. And they come back too. Sometimes they leave and they don't and come back, and then sometimes they leave and they do come back. You never know what's going to happen. But I'm really open. I just know what will work for the actors that I have. That's another thing, is that it has to fit the voices that I know I have. My group is growing, but it's still, I don't know, and people go in and come out, so I don't always have the same people in the group. So I know who I have right now, and I know who's going to be for the season available. So I know whose voices this would work for, and if the voice, because this is all by voice. That's one of the things about doing a radio play, and that's what I mean about the actors having to stretch a muscle that they normally don't stretch. I play the femme fatale. I mean, you've known me for a while. I'm the least femme fatale person in the world, and I got to play a femme fatale. I loved it. But I just, I would never get cast as it, because I don't look like that kind of a character. I don't, and it was so much fun. I played people, I've played psycho people, I play all kinds of different characters, and a lot of the characters that you play in a radio play are that you never get cast if you went for a play that you were on stage, because it's just you even though it's more open than television or movies, theater still, it has to work with who you are. You can't be skinny and be playing someone who is like fat. Even if they put you in a fat suit, it's not going to work for a lot of the characters that it is. I mean, it's not the silly thing, but it's the first thing that popped into my head. I'm just saying that theater is more exacting. You're on stage, and it has to go by your body type and who you are. I mean, aging is easy. You can be older or younger. that part is not a problem. But being different body type than you are, that can be a problem on stage. But on radio theater, you can be anything. It is cool.
Yeah, it's the same with writing. One of the things you can do is explore different ages, different personalities, and try to get into the heads of characters who are completely different from you and how they see the world and how they react. And one of the cool things you can sometimes do is write stories where, your hero gets seen from a different viewpoint, and from that viewpoint, they're the villain. So, just being creative lets you see the world through more perspectives, which I think is extremely valuable for society today, because going back to that idea of how when you talk about us being polarized and compartmentalized and echo chambers, what that really means is people have lost the ability to take the perspective of the other side and basically understand where the other side is coming from. And the other side may still be making very bad mistakes and doing things in a detrimental way, but you're not going to understand how to deal with that unless you understand why they come from where they come from and why they might see you as an obstacle. And again, you can't just make the other side go away. You're always going to have to, learn to figure out how to live and compromise. And, that's the only way we're going to get into a better future.
That's true. That's true. Also, there's an aspect of it that I haven't mentioned. We have a lot of fun. We get silly. One of our actors, every time he leaves the Skype rehearsal room, he sings "Happy Trails to You." I mean, we have fun. We have a really fun group of people. It's
I'm still hearing "Happy Trails" in my head. Okay?
Yeah. He's got a great voice too. So when he sings it, he sounds really good. But it's like where you could hear all the people that's on the rehearsal laughing because he does it every time.
That's
and he
great.
knows it. That's why he's doing. He's doing it to be entertaining. But we have fun. We have a lot of fun.
Excellent. Okay, well, we're closing up on our time here, but it's been an absolutely great interview. I look forward to hearing some more of your interviews and your plays and your books, and we'll put links in the description so that other people can go and access them. We just completed an interview. I just completed an interview with Sherri before we started this one that will be on her show, Chatting with Sherri. So we're really looking forward to that, and hopefully we'll be back at a future point. So Sherri, it's always wonderful talking to you, and it's just been a lot of fun, and we hope that we're inspiring some people to just go out there and be creative.
I hope so. Thank you for inviting me. I enjoyed it.
Oh, it was great. It was great. So thank you very much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
And that wraps today's interview with Sherri Rabinowitz of Blog Talk Radio's Chatting with Sherri. Please look for all the great links in the video description, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Until next time, imagine the best future for all of us.